Hello brothers, this is Mr. Ellis. I'm recording this video in an effort to provide you with a study guide before we take the final, or the AP test, on Tuesday the 2nd of next week. Hopefully you'll review these videos. We've gone over them in class, these statements. We are going to probably end with the last class Thursday, tomorrow. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about here first is the decision structure. A decision structure allows you to examine a variable for one or many values. We want to start with the if statement. The if statement is the classic decision structure. Okay, what I've written out here is that the decision structure allows you to change the sequence of statement execution. By nature, programming languages execute one statement after the other. In order for you to change that flow or that sequence, you have to have a disruptive statement. An if statement has two nodes. The if is the condition. It checks this condition. When it finds a true value, it executes the then node. If the condition is false, it will execute the else node. Okay. I want to start by simply using one variable for one value. I'm going to check x to see if it's 10. It's not 10. It happens to be 100. So it will go to the else node. We expect to see the condition is false. I'm going to save this and call for an execution. And when the condition is false, we get the else section. Now let's change it to 10. Save and execute. The condition is true. We get the then section of the code. A if statement can check one variable for many values, but it involves some complex looking code. It's not very complex. Once you've seen it, you'll understand it. Let's see about putting it right there. And here's the structure. The if statement can be organized to check one variable from many values, but it involves some complex code. This code is if, this is the condition, 10, it will execute this then node. The else node for this if is another if. So it's if, else, if, else. This last else has to be in here because it's like a default node. It will execute when neither 8, 6, or 10 are found. It will execute this else node. The last else goes with this if, like this. So it goes if, else, if, else, if, else. That's it looks complex, but it's a very simple concept. Okay, so we have 10. So we expect the default node to be executed. Let's see what happens. I'm going to execute this. The value of x is 10. Oh, I'm sorry. There is a 10 in there. I thought it was 100. Let us go through and make it 100 again. And now we'll see that we'll get the else node. The value of x was not found. That is the default node. It is the last ifs else. Now, most programming languages provide a structure that will do the same thing, but it uses less code and it's cleaner. It's not a confusing flow. The case structure is what it's called. Okay, and in Java, this is done with the switch statement. Okay, here we see the switch statement. The keyword is switch. The variable that is to be examined is placed between parentheses. It's like the parameter of the call to switch. So switch examines that variable, and in the case that it is 12, it will execute these two statements. Notice we don't have any curly brackets. The curly brackets are not needed because it's naturally blocked. We have the case 12 block, the case 14 block, the case 99 block. And then, of course, we have our defaults, or our catch-all. If none of these values are found, then the default is executed. Okay. Let's make sure that we have a value in there. See, I didn't put a value in there. So let's make it 12. Okay. In that case, we're going to have the switches examining x, and x will find 12, and it will write out the value of x is 12, and then it breaks. Break means break out and go to the next statement, next sequential statement. Of course, there is no next sequential statement, but that's what it would do. Execute these statements and then break out to the next sequential statement. I'm going to execute this, and we find that the value is 12. Now what happens when we don't have the value found is the default is executed. Let's change this back to 100. And now we execute, and we will find that the value of x not in the list is not in the list. I should say is not in the list. Of course, you know Mr. Ellis. The value of x not in this list of numbers. Okay. What happens if I take that breakout? If you take the breakout and it executes and finds a value, instead of breaking out of the structure, it will execute the next executable statement. So what happens is it simply falls through until it finds a break. It says, hey, I want to execute this. The value is 12. I'll execute this. And since I don't have a break, I'll execute the next executable statement. And then when I hit this break, I'll fall out. Now, sometimes that's valuable. If you want a sequence of statements executed, say from 14 on, you only want this, but anything less than 14, you want all of this executed. That is logically not sound. I think that would probably be better suited for a method call. Okay, so let's see what happens. I'm going to save this guy, and I'm going to execute. And we find that the value is 12 and the value is 14, and then we hit the break and we fall out. Now, so far all we've checked is integers. Of course you can check with an if statement, you can check the value of a string. However, when you compare strings, you should use the dot equals, which is one of our string methods we've examined. But in the switch statement, you also can, in switch and if statement, you also can compare the variable to a string. The switch statement can examine string variables. This is new to the version 7. We are currently at version 8. What it is I've assigned a value to K, the state, Glory, Missouri, and it will examine K for these Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, these states. When Missouri is found, which it is, it will write out the value of K is, guess what, Missouri. And then it breaks, just as the other in the integer value was executed. So I'm going to save this puppy and executing. And we should find that it is Missouri. The value of K is Missouri. What if we put in here, the string is Clifton, which is my name. Save him and execute. What happens? Everybody should be able to predict that none of these values are found. It keeps checking until it hits the default statement. When it doesn't find anything and default arrives, it executes the default. The value of k is not in the list. Thank you. This has been Decision Structures, an attempt to provide a study guide for AP Computer Science.